And we're going to do 3 colors of another flower, Vinca. Now, I've never grown these from seed before. And both of these seeds need to be started 12 weeks before the last freeze. And I'm going to use a 10 by 10 extra sturdy bootstrap farmer tray, along with the 2-inch soil blocker. And I'm going to cover it with a dome, a greenhouse dome. This is an old Jiffy dome. It's from those Jiffy greenhouses you see in the store. They have those little flat pellets and you add water and they expand. Have you seen those before? That's what that's from. And then I have some new ones that I bought a few years ago, and it was really hard to find new ones that were cheap, but I think I have a link for that on Amazon. And I always cover all my seeds with domes. It helps hold in the moisture. Now let me show you the soil I'm going to use. I just opened it, so it's kind of awkward to pick it up. It's my absolute favorite brand, ProMix. And I either use the moisture control, which actually everything right now in the grow room is planted in that, but I'm out of it. And this year I decided to buy the organic. Yeah, it says garden, but it is a potting soil mix. I like that they come compacted. They're rectangular, they have a handle, and they stack well. They're easy to store. I buy them from Home Depot. So I like to put 25 soil blocks in this 10 by 10 tray. And it's a little bit tricky, but it can be done. Let me show you how. Now, the first 4 rows of 4, that's simple. That's easy. Really straightforward. So just take your time, and with experience, you'll learn the trick to it. Now, let's look at the Vinca. They're not as tiny. This is a much better size. They're not huge, but it's better. Let me show you. These I can actually count out. I have the tags ready. And I want to plant 50 all together. I did mention where I'm going to plant these. Most of my garden is an in-ground garden. I prefer it that way. It requires much less water. But along the side of our tall, long, narrow rowhouse, the area between our rowhouse and the rowhouse next door, I have 4 green stalks. And I'm going to have these flowers in both green stalks, 16 plants of each. And in the front, I have some porch pots. After we're finished sowing these seeds, I'll show you where. Now, Vinca's small. It's going to be an 8-inch plant and about 8 to 12 inches wide. And I have another garden. It's a memorial garden for my son. And this is what I want to plant there. So I need to make sure I have enough to fill that space. So we're going to try 50. And what I don't use, I can put on the community shelf. Now the petunias, they do require light to germinate. Most seeds don't, but petunias do, and that's the reason I did not put any soil over those little holes, just a little bit of water. But the Vinca requires it to be dark, and that's the reason I covered the seeds with soil. Most of the time that is what I do. Mostly I do it for moisture, but this time I did it to make those seeds be in the dark. And I'm not going to put it into the grow light yet. It's going to take about 7 to 21 days to germinate. And I read, be careful because they don't like to be moist. And once they germinate, if you leave them in the damp, they're going to rot. So I put them close to this other seed so I can keep my eye on them every day. Okay, let's clean up and then go up and I'll show you where I'm going to plant these flowers. And they're both summer flowers, so they're going to go out 2 weeks after the last freeze, about mid-May, Mother's Day. Now 4 green stalks. And in winter I unstack them and I cover them with fleece to protect them. But they'll get stacked back up later. And this is where the flowers are going to be planted out. I like to alternate 1 pocket flowers, 1 pocket greens, 1 pocket flowers, 1 pocket greens. And our greens are strawberries. Now they'll grow year round. And herbs. Each green stalk is going to have its own herb. And creeping Jenny, a vining plant. And those stay in the green stalks. Then we're going to have spring flowers and summer flowers. In spring we're going to put pansies, which are already there. And later we're going to put some stock and some snapdragons. Probably start those the next vlog. Then we'll switch those out in the summer for the petunias, the Vinca, and some marigolds. And we'll get them all stacked up. Now I like to plant on a diagonal. I don't plant all the same for each tier. I like that cascading effect. You'll see what I'm talking about in the spring. This is the window that squirrel was tapping on. My chair's right over there, and it was looking right at me. That's interesting. I wonder if it'll ever do that again. Good morning, and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today, we're going to pot up Vinca, also known as annual periwinkle. Now the variety we're growing is Heat Wave. The seeds are from Baker Creek, and I have 3 colors. Now they're going to grow about 8 inches tall and about 8 to 12 inches wide. About this size. They're going to be a small flowering plant. It's also known as Madagascar periwinkle. And it will grow year-round in Zone 10. But any zone below that, it's grown as an annual. These seedlings are 5 weeks old. Now, I started these seeds in late January, so that's more than 6 weeks ago. Now, they germinated in 9 days with a humidity dome, but no heat mat. Now, they do require darkness to germinate. But I just simply put some soil on top of each seed and patted it down, and that was enough. I read these really complicated instructions like leave it in a dark bag for 21 days, but didn't require that. Just top it with soil to block the light. And I did have it under grow lights, and they still germinated. Now, the first week they grew really slowly, so I went ahead and put them on a heat mat, and they've been on there until today. So after they were in the soil blocks for 4 weeks, I started feeding them. Now, this is one of my summer flowers for our green stalk and for a memorial garden. Now, I have 4 green stalks, and I like to plant them on a diagonal. I don't like to put the same type of plant on each tier. I'd rather have it spiraling down. So I'm going to need 4 plants for each green stalk, 4 for each color. Now, Vinca is heat and drought tolerant, and I like that because last year we had the driest year since 1999. And the memorial garden, I'm not out there every day to water. They also don't require any deadheading. You don't have to take off the old flowers for new blossoms to grow. I like that. That's less work. They also don't require pinching back. They're going to grow inside under the lights for 6 more weeks. And we're going to bring them outside a few hours every day to start hardening them off after our last frost. Here, that's early May. And we're going to put them in the green stalk and the memorial garden 2 to 4 weeks after our last frost. That's mid-May or after Mother's Day. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Now we're 2 weeks past our last frost and it's still cold here overnight, but daytime temperatures are warming up and it's time to harden off our Vinca, or known as Madagascar Periwinkle. These plants are 13 weeks old and they grow very slowly. They were potted up 9 weeks ago. Today, they're going to be outside only for 2 hours, then back in the kitchen under these lights. And every day will increase the amount of time they stay outside. We're going to start them in this protected area here near the house. They'll be protected from the sun and the wind. And then every day we'll expose them to more and more sun. They're going to harden off for 7 to 10 days. Now, they don't need to be pinched back. Vinca are drought and heat tolerant, so be careful, don't overwater. I like that they are pest resistant and don't need to be deadheaded. You know, when you have to remove all the old flowers. Now, a lot of the flowers I grow are edible. We add them to salads, but Vinca are not edible. But they will bloom all summer until the first frost. Now, 16 of these are going to go into the green stalk planters. And then I forget how many, but most of the rest of them are going to go into a memorial garden. And the ones that are left over, we'll put into the front porch pots. Here in the city, I have to protect them from digging squirrels and curious birds. Now it's nesting time, and birds are pulling tender leaves to add to their nests. And the new baby fledglings, they're curious. They're like toddlers. They don't know what's edible and what's not, and they test everything out with their beaks. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today we're going to plant our annual periwinkle into 2 of our green stalk planters. These are going to be for our summer flowers, and we have 3 varieties, all heat wave, but we have blue, apricot, and raspberry. These plants are 15 weeks old. They grow very slowly, and they've already hardened off for 2 weeks. So Madagascar periwinkle is also known as Vinca. It's a heat-loving, drought-tolerant summer flower. They do prefer full sun, and here between the houses, it's mostly shade, so we're going to see if they continue to bloom. This is the first time growing them for me. Now, old flowers, they're just going to fall off themselves. You don't have to deadhead periwinkles. You want the soil to go all the way to the top of the tier, not set down and recessed, because that's going to give more shade to the plant. You want each tier of the green stalk full of soil all the way to the top. Periwinkle are naturally pest resistant. They're going to flower all summer until the first frost. Now, if you want them to keep blooming all summer long, make sure you feed them. I'm going to use a liquid blossom fertilizer from Fox Farm every 2 to 4 weeks. Now, the flowers themselves, they are not edible. Squirrels love to dig in these green stalks. They'll even climb up them. So I'm going to protect the plants with some hardware cloth. I'm going to water them in now, but as a rule, periwinkle don't like to stay moist. Their roots will rot and their leaves will turn yellow. So try to let them dry out between watering. I am going to add some mulch, mainly to protect any animals from getting their fur caught on this hardware cloth. And if the plants stay too moist, I can always remove the mulch. Now all 4 green stalks are planted. 2, I left the spring flowers because they're still going. And 2, I replaced the spring flowers for summer flowers. So check back for an update. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today it's time for a Madagascar periwinkle update. In mid-May, I planted them out several different ways in several locations. This is my first time growing Madagascar periwinkle, and I picked it because I wanted a drought and heat-tolerant, pest-resistant, easy-to-grow flower for my son's memorial garden. So we're going to go ahead and start over there. This morning on our morning walk, I videoed because I want to show you what it looks like to grow these with very little care. Then we'll come back and see how they're growing here at home. Now I wanted to show you an example of how heat and drought tolerant these flowers are. We planted them mid-May. Same time as the ones we planted at the house. Now, it did rain, and that took care of watering them in for me, and then it turned cold, and they struggled. May was a cold month, but then when the warm weather hit, they started growing and flowering, and you can see how well they've done. I haven't come to water or feed them. This is really, really poor soil and very shallow. This soil is full of tree roots from an old tree that used to be here. But still, they're doing well, and I think they look good. Now here along the side of the house, we planted them in a variety of containers. Some made of clay, which dry out quickly, and some made of plastic, which hold in water. Some containers are bigger like these, and some are tiny. Now this is a good example. If you give them more soil, they're going to grow bigger and better and have more flowers. Now I do water these if they dry out, but the ones in the plastic don't need watering every day. But I do feed them once a month. Now, periwinkle like full sun. And here on the side of the house, they only get 2 hours of sun a day. Plus, in the green stalks, they get even less. Because sometimes they're turned towards the back. Because every day I turn the green stalks a quarter turn. So they don't get 2 hours of direct sun every day. Plus, the lower tiers, they're more shaded from the higher up plants. Especially over there, the creeping Jenny is really shaded, the periwinkle. But they all have flowers. They're small, but they are flowering. They tend to have one flower on each plant. I do water the green stalk every day, not that specific pocket. And I do fertilize once a month. Now in this area, they get the 2 hours of sunlight a day. And that seems to be enough to make them bloom. Now you notice the smaller pots, the plants are smaller and have less flowers, and the bigger pots, the plants are larger and have more flowers. Now these two are plastic. All the others in this area are clay. The plastic's done better. I was concerned it would hold too much water because they don't like their feet wet, but because they're small, they dry out faster. There's a few things I haven't yet mentioned. I like that they deadhead themselves. I don't have to remove old flowers. Look, right here. Here's a good example. The flowers just fall off themselves. Now, since this is my first time growing them, what have I learned? Well, number one, they do not like the cold. Mid-May, I planted them the same time as my peppers and tomatoes, but we were still having nights in the 50s, and the periwinkle do not like that. Now, what does that look like? Well, yellowing leaves and no growth. They didn't die, but the leaves were very yellow. And I had been wondering, am I overwatering them, overfeeding them? But no, it was simply too cold. Next time I grow them, I'm going to wait and plant them later. Now, secondly, if you notice out at the memorial garden, I would plant them closer together. I don't remember the spacing that I used. I'd have to check my notes, but I would definitely put them closer together and a double row. Now, if I went every week and watered and fed them once a month, I assume they would grow bigger. But you have to hand carry water from the faucet, and that's just too hard on my arthritis. I'm satisfied with their growth, but I definitely would like them closer together. Now, how much will they grow this month in August? We'll see. We'll come back for an update. Now, these marigolds are done. They have outgrown these pots. So I'm going to transfer them to the in-ground garden. Then I'm going to take all of these Madagascar periwinkles down to the memorial garden and fill in those gaps. If you notice, the front row, which were the hot pink, the heat wave raspberry, they get more sun, so they're bigger. And the ones behind is heat wave apricot. They're smaller because there's less sun in the back. So I'm going to put these out there and give them a new home. And then this area will be clear, and it's going to give me less to water because lately there's been no rain. Thank you for visiting Withrow Urban Homestead. See you later. Bye-bye. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. This is my new favorite spot. These flowers are amazing. They're easy to grow and you don't have to take care of them. They take care of themselves. They're Madagascar periwinkle, and they're an annual that will die back with the frost. And growing in amongst those are the spring flowers. They're from the side of the house. They're stalk and snapdragons. And they were struggling over there, so I planted them over here, and with the cool weather, they're growing. I hope the stalk blooms. It was an easy morning because we didn't have to water. Thank you for visiting Withrow Urban Homestead. See you later. Bye-bye.